Hey everybody, it's Colin Mason. I want to start off by asking you a question. Have you ever felt the uncomfortableness of not knowing what's coming next? Have you ever been transitioning from one phase of your life into the next and just not quite sure exactly what to expect when that time comes? Well, when I was graduating my college as an undergraduate, and I was going through senior week. And senior week is a celebration of the seniors. It's like a 10-day celebration where there's a lot of drinking and there's a lot of social events. And it was just a really good time when we go to the Red Sox game, and we would go into Boston to a bunch of bars. It was a blast. But this whole time I had this really nervous feeling because I wasn't sure what was going to happen after that week ended. Was I going to have to move back in with my parents? Was I going to have to try to get a menial job for the time being just to save enough money so that I could go and live on my own? I didn't have a job. I was starting to think about the applications and what do I want to do? And I wanted to make a big impact, and I wanted to really change the lives of other people, but I didn't know quite how to do that. And the baseball coach, I was an assistant baseball coach while I was at school. And that baseball coach was like, Mace, I got a really good opportunity for you. You should check it out. And so I looked into it, and it was a strength and conditioning position at the same school that I just graduated from. And now I didn't have any strength and conditioning knowledge at all, like you've seen in my previous emails. And so I went in for the interview. They accepted me in. I went in for the interview to get the position. And after a series of interviews, they said, "Hey, Mace, listen, you're our guy, right? We want you in this position. However, you're gonna go need to get this certification." Now, it was the CSCS by NCAA, it was the NSCA, excuse me, and it was the strength and conditioning certification. And so the guy who was my boss, he gave me this book, this huge book, this thick, and he said, "All right, study this and go take the exam." And so I was just kind of flipping through the book. Opened up the first page, right? Open up to the first page. I didn't know a single word on that page. It was a shock. It was really an eye opener to me because I had no idea what I gotten myself into. And so I started studying, and I started kind of learning and implementing. And it was hard. I had a really hard time learning and implementing and executing, learning the material. And so, like I said in my previous emails, I took the exam and I failed. And when I was in my car and I was crying. I was 21 years old, 22 years old, and I was sitting in my car just crying my eyes out because I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know what the next step was going to have for me. And so what I learned is that I needed a plan. Because up until that point, I was just kind of going through life, like through the steps of life, like I thought I should be. And what I recognized is that I didn't have any plan. I didn't have a plan. What I didn't have was systems in my life. And what I mean by systems is that I didn't have operations in my life that were so consistent, and I knew that if I continued to operate in these systems of my life that I could produce results. I was kind of just going about the motions. I didn't recognize how much work and effort it takes to build systems in your life so that you can consistently produce results, systematically dominate, right, your life. And so that's what I needed. I needed a plan, and I needed systems. Another thing, after reading that book for so many hours, and I failed it, I had to take the test again in 3 weeks. I said, okay, I have to take this test again in 3 weeks. And I did not pass the first time. It was hard. It was very hard for me because I didn't have any knowledge about the material before. And so I said, how can I learn this material in 3 weeks? So I started to put together a plan to actually learn how to learn. And what I did in that 3-week period, just short of a month, right, is I learned in different ways. I made different flashcards. I remember getting this app where whenever I was, instead of scrolling through Instagram, I would sit there and I would go through these flashcards on the app that I created. And I was going through flashcards and quizzes, and I was testing myself and I learned how to learn as opposed to just opening up the book and just reading, right? And when you're just reading a book, and you're not actively using that information and putting it into the systems that you're creating while you're learning, it's very hard to retain that information. And so I'm trying to create these systems. And what I was really doing is I was teaching myself how to learn the material. And so that was my second thing. And my third thing is I realized I needed a support system. I needed people around me that were supporting me, that actually wanted me to achieve the goals that I was setting. And for me to go out it alone, if you're going after your goals alone, you really need to reevaluate what you're doing. Because when you have a support system, it's one of the most powerful things that you can ever use in your path of this life, this journey of life. If you get people around you that are cheering you on, that are supporting you, that are helping you when things get tough, right? 2 weeks in, I had a breakdown, I had a mental breakdown. Like, if I don't pass this exam, right? I have to take the test in 8 days. If I don't pass this exam, I may not get the position of a strength and conditioning coach at a college, at a university. What am I going to do then? If I fail this test, what am I going to do then? And so I recognized that I needed a plan. I needed systems. I needed to learn how to learn, to implement what I was learning, to solidify it in my brain. And I also needed a support system. That's what I learned. And that's those 3 or 4 things I just listed are the most powerful things that I start to use and implement as I'm creating this business. What do I need? I need a plan. I need systems in place. I need to learn how to learn all these things: funnel building, email sequences, marketing, productivity, distribution, all these things. I needed to learn how to learn that stuff, right? And I also needed a support system, right? I needed people in my life that were going to support me and help me through all of these things. And so I think most of the times we're stuck on how to do something as opposed to why we do something, and I think that's the key, is to figure out that why, and that's the overarching thing. And so I hope this helps, and I hope that you can kind of take my story and figure out how you've overcome certain situations in your life, or if you're going through something right now, hey, I'm here to support you, number one. And number two, who are the other people that you can get around you that can help support you? What kind of systems, what kind of plans can you put together in your life right now that'll help you dominate moving forward? Are you trying to learn a new skill? Are you trying to learn a new, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. You're constantly learning, you're constantly growing. Are you doing that to the best of your ability? Are you doing that with such focus and systematic positioning that you can actually learn how to learn what you're learning? And I know that's kind of complicated, but trust me, as you start to figure this out and think about that, it really makes a big difference. All right, talk to you soon. Much love.